Hey everybody, today we're going to be taking a closer look at Mangog, the first of two champions coming to the contest in March of 2021. Now, before we get started, just a quick little disclaimer. For those of you who are new to the channel, I am not a high-tier player. I am a casual player who, let's be honest, doesn't know what he's doing half the time. So that will be how I will be approaching this review. It's not going to be some crazy in-depth analysis into the numbers and being able to tell you whether or not this guy is going to be the absolute god. I just like to give my opinions on just from the perspective of a casual player, someone who maybe doesn't necessarily go in and read every single note that there is about the character, because also, with Mangog, there's a lot to his spotlight. But yeah, so this video is not going to be quite what you're used to, but I still like to give my opinion because we need to know the voice of the casual player, because not everybody is an endgame player in the community. Also, the gameplay that you are about to see, which all took place on the content creator beta, was my very first fights with Mangog. What I like to do typically is I don't really bother reading any of the notes. I might skim over them real quick, but I don't read into them too much. I just like to take the champion, go in, do some fights, and just kind of learn as I go. So again, the gameplay is not going to be some expert mastery of the game by any means, but again, I just think it's important to give some feedback from the perspective of a casual player, so hopefully this video is still enjoyable for you. But now that I've babbled on long enough, let's get into this. Now, Mangog is a Mystic class character, and to be honest, when this guy was first announced and kind of taking a first look at him, I wasn't too excited about him. Part of the reason being, again, as I skimmed through the notes, there was a lot of information. So it seems like this guy was going to be a very complex champion, and that seems to be true. So again, from the perspective of a more casual player, complex isn't always the greatest. That being said, he does have a lot of pros and cons, and I feel like Mangog is going to be one of those guys where it's probably up to personal preference whether you like him or not, because it seems like, from what I've read and from what I understand of the character, it seems there is a very specific way to get, or like a specific way to play this character in order to play him at his full potential. Now I'm gonna, as I said, we've got the champion spotlight notes here, so I'm just gonna be bouncing off of this here as we go. So let's start off here with what they have, kind of a brief summary of Mangog's strengths, and weaknesses. So the first thing, and actually this kind of surprised me, but then thinking about my first fights with him, it does actually kind of make sense. It seems like, or not, it seems like it is the fact that Mangog has the potential to have a lot of immunities. Like, this guy could potentially just bypass a whole lot of stuff, to be honest. So it says here that Mangog is immune to armor break debuffs and bleed effects at all times, but also can opt into triggering a new buff called Energy Protection, which grants immunity to Shock, Incinerate, Cold Snap, and Frostbite. So that is a good chunk and some of the more common degen debuffs out there, and yeah, I mean, the fact that he can be immune to a lot of those is going to take some characters just right out of the picture. There are a lot of characters who rely on one or multiple of those abilities, and so he's probably going to be a great counter to a lot of those characters. Now, the next thing here, it says, is great damage potential. Now, from my understanding, and again, looking at my gameplay with this character, you're going to see that, yeah, his damage output in these clips maybe isn't the highest, but again, as I said, it's just I went in without really any idea basically how to play the character, just tried to learn him. So it seems like this guy can have some pretty awesome damage that you can get out of him, and reading this more and more, I see now how I should have been playing the character. But it says here that Mangog has many ways to ramp up his damage with armor breaks, fury buffs, and burst energy damage on his heavy attack. All these can stack together to deal some pretty chunky energy damage. And yeah, when I think about it, this is one thing at the time I didn't realize, but now makes complete sense. If you watch closely, anytime I do a heavy attack with Mangog, you'll see this this nice little red number pop up after the initial damage from his attack, and that number is quite large compared to just the base attack damage that it does. And one thing that, again, reading through these notes here, that I learned now is that Mangog, the longer that you charge that heavy attack, the more damage you can do. So in these clips, I just kind of do the regular, just kind of like just long enough to activate the heavy attack, but not really charging it by any means. So we're definitely, it doesn't look like we're getting anywhere near like the possible damage, or the maximum damage we could get out of that attack. So I would be interested to see exactly how hard he can hit when playing with that correctly. But yeah, moving on though, I really wanted to get to this really quickly here, and that is one of his strengths is buff removal, and this was something I experienced very well, which, looking at my time now, you should be arriving around to this fight very soon if you're not already there, and that is the Juggernaut fight. Now, Juggernaut, let's be honest, he's the unstoppable ability, and that's pretty much it. So when you remove said ability, he kind of just becomes a punching bag. Now, it says in the notes here that Mangog has a decent amount of stagger in his kit. However, while enraged, he can trigger a crazy amount of staggers on the opponent, allowing him to easily prevent an opponent from gaining any buffs. And that, oh boy, that is very true. That is one thing I noticed very quickly, is that we were getting into like the high teens of number of staggers on the opponent, and particularly on Juggernaut, really quickly. And I mean, anytime he activates a special 1 or 2, you're gonna get the unstoppable. It's a real pain. It's not necessarily difficult to deal with. It's just one of those annoying kind of pain in the butt champions out there. But these stagger abilities like removed all of those, and there were long periods of time where he wasn't getting a single unstoppable buff, and it was awesome. Admittedly, at the time, it took me a little while to actually realize what was happening, but once I did, that was awesome. And you definitely noticed, like, once all the staggers wore off and he was getting that back, you definitely noticed. But yeah, his stagger ability is insane. Honestly, it is absolutely nuts. And until going into more detail in the notes here, honestly, it seemed like that was going to be like his main ability, is just he's able to just remove buffs rather on your opponent like crazy. That kind of seemed to be his main thing, but now looking at him, it seems like it's kind of that, plus a combination of the immunities, plus a combination of a high energy damage. Now, moving into his weaknesses, that's where that is a big thing to bring up, is that he heavily relies on that energy damage. So if you're up against a champion, who is energy resistant, don't pick Mangog. Do not. It even says here, most of Mangog's crazy damage is burst energy damage, so just don't play Mangog against any energy resistant champion at all. It also says that some of his other weaknesses in here are evade, petrify, or other abilities that prevent / invert power gain, opponent on hit effects, and stun immunity or heavy attack punish. So, kind of just, again, I'm going to read through the notes here. So it says, for evade, to play Mangog effectively, you will need to run 5-hit combos, which is pretty much what I was doing for all of my fights that you're going to see here. Opponents who have a chance to evade will prevent this loop and reduce his effectiveness. So like the characters like Spider-Man, Nightcrawler, those guys are gonna just be pains in the butt. And again, just do not bring Mangog against those characters. We got here petrify or other abilities that prevent / invert power gain. Mangog gets a large portion of his power via his passive power gain. So any abilities that prevent this or invert this will shut him down completely. Now there is one of his synergies, if I remember correctly, it's with Loki. It starts you off with an initial bar of energy, which I'm not sure necessarily if that will help with that. I don't think that'll make a crazy difference to that weakness, but you know, if you find yourself forced in that scenario, maybe bringing a Loki along with your team will be helpful. I'm just actually going to scroll down here. Was there anybody else that was with, or was it just Loki? No, it was with just Loki there. So there's no other options. You have to bring Loki if you want to start your fight with that initial bar of energy. And then we got here, opponent on hit effects. To play Mangog like a pro, he will occasionally need to take a hit while unstoppable. Opponents who power drain, inflict stuns, or deal massive burst damage on their basic attacks will prevent him from playing into this loop. So that was one thing I noticed and didn't quite expect, was when Mangog just suddenly was unstoppable, and it surprised me. But I think I did notice that when he did take those occasional hits and whatnot, it did seem like his damage did go up a little bit. It wasn't crazy, like I wasn't going, oh wow, I'm suddenly hitting so much harder than I was before, but I think it was enough that I kind of like subconsciously was like, okay, something's different here, something's new. So I don't think it's a crazy huge effect, but it's kind of helpful, I think. So yeah, so anybody who, if you're going, again, just champions, power drain, inflict stuns, any kind of burst damage, just you know, these are the characters to avoid, essentially, unless you absolutely have to. The stun immunity as well, that was something that I noticed was, again, like the stun was a very common thing. Like it was popping up frequently, and again, the heavy attack, people who can punish heavy attacks. I know English. Yeah, again, from what I've read and what I've experienced myself, heavy attacks are a huge part of just his entire kit. So, but it does leave you vulnerable, of course. So people who are able to punish against that is not great. Like it says here, Mangog wants to use long duration stuns to charge up his heavy attack. In matchups where this is prevented, he will struggle. So, again, it's just you got to know what you're going up against. And Mangog looks like he's going to be someone who, I don't think he's going to be like anywhere near God tier or beyond God tier by any means. But, you know, I think he's going to be someone who, like, has some specific fights that he'll be super duper useful for. Unfortunately, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but, you know, like, especially as you get into the higher acts and whatnot, there are certain fights where it's like you need, like, one of 5 or 6 characters, and that's the only way you're really going to beat that fight in the game. And Mangog might be one of those champions that you pull along just for those, you know, this fight here and that fight there. But again, if you get him in the right hands, though, he could be crazy good. Am I the right hands to have him in? Probably not. Let's be completely honest, probably not. But I do think he's got an interesting combination of things. Like again, like I said, there's so much. Like there's so many different like little things that happen with each of his abilities. There's literally like there's at least 3 bullet points with every single thing. There's like, I'm gonna say there's like 3 to 5 with every single little ability, like every little synergy, just everything. There's a lot. So for me, this is probably not going to be my kind of character. In the end, I think I like Mangog a little more than I thought I was going to. Kind of when he got announced and saw the first pictures of him, I was just kind of like, I'm not looking forward to him. Most of my excitement, I mean, it still is. Most of my excitement is still for Odin this month, just because it's Odin. But Mangog, he might be kind of fun. He's not the flashiest character, but he might be kind of fun to play. You know, if I manage to nab a version of him sooner rather than later, yeah, he might be someone I level up and just kind of have some fun messing around with. One thing I realize now I should have mentioned, and I totally skipped over here, under more of his strength, it does also mention here that Mangog is Suicide Mastery friendly. So it says Mangog plays quite well with the Liquid Courage and Double Edge masteries, and while enraged, he takes less damage from the Recoil mastery. This, plus his base tanky nature, can make him an absolute machine with the right mastery setup. So yeah, tanky just seems to be, I guess, the right word for him. He's a big guy. I think that's also one thing, actually, it was interesting. A lot of people were curious what size he was gonna be. I mean, of course, like, as far as, like, the actual, I guess the tag or whatever, he was gonna be an extra large or an extra large or whatever it is. But it was kind of, I think a lot of people were questioning, like, what he was gonna look like actually in-game. Honestly, I thought he was gonna get, like, the Sentinel effect, where it's kind of like the other champions are just made smaller to, like, show how much bigger he is, but he just kind of looks like he's kind of like Dragon Man size, you know, like he's not particularly bigger than anybody else, which, I mean, you look at just like the home loading screen and he is towering over Odin in that thing, so maybe a little disappointment in that regards, but yeah, in the end, I think, yeah, tanky is a very good way to describe this character, but you know what, I think I've been rambling on here long enough, so I'm just going to say thank you all so very much for watching. Let me know what you think about Mangog in the comments below. I'd be curious to hear what people have to say, especially people who, again, are a little more higher tier than I am. I'm interested to see some of the other Content Creator Program member videos as well, and all I can say is go watch the other people. If you really, really want like a super like detailed analysis of the character, there are plenty of people in the CCP who are great. If I give any recommendations, try watching some of the smaller guys. I know everybody goes to like Seaton and Brian Grant and all the really big channels, Legacy and Dork Lessons and whatnot. Try giving out some of your smaller content. Try giving your smaller content creators, pardon me, a chance, because some of them are absolutely great and can create just as good, if not better, content than all the big names you know and love. So yeah, spread the love around. Go check out some of the other smaller content creators. But yeah, with all that said and done, I think that's going to wrap it up for this video. Once again, thank you all so very much for watching, especially if you stuck around this long into the video. If you can tolerate listening to me rambling on for this long, I don't know how you do it. A lot of people tell me I'm annoying, so I appreciate it very, very much. But yeah, once again, I'm just gonna say thank you all so very much for watching. We took an early look at Mangog in Marvel Contest Champions. Once again, thank you all so very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.